Ow. You ready?
Yep. Welcome to E-Trees Enhancements, and today we are finally giving an update on something that's a lot of people have been waiting on, and that is the 6-inch 300 Blackout Ballistic Advantage barrel that I've had for a little while. This is going to be the 600-ish round review or update on the barrel. Sorry it took so long. 300 Blackout's expensive, and I've been moving through the setups, figuring out what I needed and what had to be done to make this thing function properly. Now, the 6-inch barrel is a little picky when it comes to function, and there's some things that you have to do and other things to counteract or balance that aspect out, which a lot of other specific platforms can account for it by having adjustable gas systems. So that is something that had to be solved, which I did figure out, so we're gonna go over it. Now, to start off, you're probably asking, well, where is this 300 Blackout gun? Well, it's right here in this backpack. So let's pull it out. This is key. And there she is. So this is the 300 Blackout 6-inch barrel from Ballistic Advantage, and we are gonna go over everything that I had to do to get good, reliable, quote-unquote function out of this, because 300 Blackout is extremely picky when it comes to function when you're trying to do subs and supers. So for now, we are gonna leave this guy here so you can admire it. Here, let's give it a little bit of rotation so you can see it. And we're gonna move on to the primary parts lists that you will require in order to get this to function properly. I'm only gonna go over the parts that are essential for this to work. I'm not gonna go over the rest of the parts. There's several parts that really don't matter as to what you pick, like an upper receiver, lower, handguard, stuff like that. That can all be your decision on what you wanna run, but we're gonna talk about the specific function elements here. So let's get started. I'm gonna pull out the whiteboard where I wrote everything down. Now, just don't mind my disgusting handwriting. I never fix it after learning cursive. Thank you, teachers. Anyway, so this is the functional parts list. And obviously, to start, you're gonna need the Ballistic Advantage 6-inch 300 Blackout barrel. You need it, you're gonna have to use it. At least this video is gonna be if you want to purchase said barrel. There's other barrels. There's a 6 1/4, I think, from CAC Industry. And then I think there's a 6 1/4 as well from Rainier Arms. So those are other options. I don't know if they all offer the same gas system length, so we're gonna completely ignore those because today we're specifically talking about the Ballistic Advantage one, whereas I like to call Ballistic Disadvantage because every single thing that I've purchased from Ballistic Advantage has had some kind of problem with it. Normally involved with undergassing, but I've also had to send barrels back and bulk carriers because they've had defects. But that's not what we're here for. We're gonna talk about the barrel. So obviously the barrel, and if you notice over here, I put a number down. And that is because I had to drill this gas port to 0.125, which is 1/8 of an inch. I needed to. This thing was hella under gas. So this barrel, as it sits, I don't think it was intended for subs, at least not factory subs. So in order for me to get the most gas out of the system, I had to drill it as large as the inner diameter of a gas tube. You literally cannot go any bigger because any bigger won't have any effect on the system because that's the diameter of the gas tube. You can only flow as much gas as you can put through the smallest diameter hole, and in this case normally it's the gas port, so it's the smallest diameter, but now it's the same diameter as the gas tube, so any further won't make a difference. Moving on. Voltor clamp-on gas block. I recommend this one because of the size and dimensions. It also looks a little bit cooler, but it does allow a better seal, which is key when you're talking with such low pressures that 300 Blackouts runs. So the better seal you can get, the better the system's gonna run. So I highly recommend a sort of clamp-on gas block. I find the Voltor one to be the best one for 750 diameter. Then, if you intend on running subs, you're gonna need a suppressor of your choice. a baffled suppressor, not a flow-through design. You need the back pressure of the baffled design. So you can't go use one of those OSSs or whatever their new name is. If you intend on running just supers, you don't need the suppressor. Bootleg adjustable bolt carrier. This is key if you want to run the system as best as it possibly can. You can run, for example, on my bootleg bolt carrier, I can run fully open to where it bleeds out the most gas with supers with the suppressor, and it runs beautifully. And then if you want to run subs, you have to fully close it so it stops bleeding the gas, and then you run the suppressor and it allows you to run subs. With a caveat, we'll get into that. So after that, a law tactical folder. This is optional, you don't need to. I prefer it because it gets, this whole package allows me to fold it down as small as a SIG Rattler with a substantial price decrease. But in order for it to work, you have to buy the CAC Industry lightweight law tactical folder extension, specifically this one. It's made out of aluminum, brown, because it's anodized brown. It's made out of aluminum, and I believe it weighs like 0.6 ounces, if I'm not mistaken. Then, like I said, that's optional. If you don't run the law tactical folder, you don't need to run, obviously, that extension, because that extension is only necessary if you're running the law tactical folder. You need also a sprinkle yellow, which is the reduced power spring, and you also have to empty your buffer. You're gonna have to open up the buffer, pull the steel weights out of it, and then close back up. And that'll give you a 1 ounce buffer instead of the 3 ounce that a carbine is. So in this aspect, without the buffer, you probably would be concerned over bolt bounce. And that's really not a concern if you're not running full auto. That's the whole point of the buffer. It does assist in loading and the control of the bolt carrier moving, but just to put it into perspective, the Honey Badger and the SIG Rattler do not run buffers. So it is not essential. Making sure that your gas system is tuned properly is. So this is the list. Everything else is completely optional as to what you want to run. But these are the main elements to making this particular firearm operate properly. Now, I do want to mention that without these items, and if you're just running the 300 Blackout barrel with a carbine buffer, it does run supers just fine for the most part. There are some supers that weren't too happy, so I would recommend right off the bat, just open up the gas port to 0.125 and run heavier weights in the system, because that way it's a lot easier to fix an overgassing problem by adding weights than it is to fix an undergassing problem, and that has been the problem with this barrel. I believe that it's perfectly gassed for whatever specific ammo they chose to run at Ballistic Advantage. But just don't try your luck. Immediately drill it out to 0.125 and don't worry about it. You can add a bunch more weight. I was able to run supers unsuppressed with the 0.125 with a carbine buffer, a regular carbine spring, and the Law Tactical Folder extension, which is 2 ounces. So in total, it was a 5 ounce buffer with a regular spring, and it was able to cycle without the suppressor super, specifically Wolf, 145 grain, I believe it is. Those are supers. So it ran that beautifully. Now you're like, well, if your gas port is so open, wouldn't that be hellaciously overgassed if you have a sprinkle yellow and an empty buffer with a lightweight extension? And that is true. But the point of us being heavily overgassed is not for us to run supers, it's for us to be able to run subs. In the scenario that you want to run supers, you have this thing called a bootleg bolt carrier, which has several settings for reducing gas. I can tell you right now that if I take the suppressor off and try to run supers with this, with it in fully suppressed mode, it will not cycle. And I have 4 positions for me to put it in. So I am able to select what position I want to run the gas in so that I get perfect reliability without being heavily overgassed, even in an already overgassed system. So that solves that problem. I can run it in suppressed mode with supers, with a suppressor. I can run it in between with supers without a suppressor, and I can run it fully closed with a suppressor and cycle subs with the caveat that it does not lock back. And that has been my problem. There is nothing I can do to this system while retaining the adjustable bolt carrier for me to be able to lock back. So I'm able to cycle, load the next round, shoot, and then it just goes click like an AK instead of locking back so you can insert your next move. So there's that dilemma. The subs that I was able to cycle reliably through this gun without lockback, just cycling, was the SNB 200 grain. And then the one that didn't work at first but then started working was the Fiocchi 220 grains with the Sierra Match King bullet. For some reason, I think the carbon buildup helped seal some things, but the SNBs work right then and there with this current configuration. So once again, without being able to lock back, just cycle. I wanted originally to have a little bit more info in this video, but I wanted to give this update at the moment. Most of the most of the subs out on the market run really fast powers. And they do this so that you can get the most velocity out of the bullet out of very short barrels. And that is excellent for reducing sound. This reduces sound at the port, at the chamber, and reduces sound signature at the suppressor. It's all around better for being quiet, but it's not good for cycling a semi-auto gun. You can probably get away with this on a longer barrel, like an 8-inch barrel, because you have a longer dwell time, but this is something that's just not working with such short dwell, considering you have your gas block here and the end of the barrel right there. So this becomes a problem. But in order for me to keep going and actually be able to run manufactured subs, I would have to run a low mass bolt carrier in order for me to be able to have enough energy to cycle. However, that would put me in a scenario where it would be way too overgassed for supers, and that is concerning. And that's the whole point of this adjustable bolt carrier from Bootleg. So, unfortunately, it is what it is. This barrel is just way too short for it to be running properly on a DI, and it's just the nature of the beast. I'm counting it as a win that I'm able to cycle subs in its current setup, even if it does not lock back. If you actually want to be able to run subs out of this setup, you are going to have to manufacture your own ammo. And you're specifically going to have to run slower burning powders, because a faster burning powder increases pressure at the chamber, but it does not increase the pressure as much on the port. What you need here is you need higher gas port pressure as opposed to higher chamber pressure, which will coincidentally potentially cause a louder signature from the bullet itself. And that's kind of the downfall. I am going to continue investigating in this, and I'm going to start using my reloading setup to manufacture my own 300 Blackout subs. And I'm going to try and get the perfect setup so where I can run subs out of this reliably, and I will later post another update and give the recipe to you guys once I've mastered whatever the round may be. I'm very actually happy with the results. If you don't want to struggle with this kind of problems, you could just go out and buy a SIG Rattler, and that will give you virtually the same dimensions folded, and they're the same size. Is it worth it? That's for you to decide. So, as somebody that wanted to mimic a SIG Rattler, which coincidentally we gave this gun the name the Tinkler because tinkle is a synonym of rattle, so we called it the Tinkler because it's ugly. But it functions excellent. Nonetheless, it's up to you to decide what you'd rather go with. The only thing is you have to piece this together. But it shouldn't be too hard now that I've released the information of what you need to do to get reliable function to get subs to cycle through this. Once again, you can, if you only want subs, you can get rid of the Bootleg adjustable and go with a lightweight bolt carrier, and then you can mess with the buffer weights after that, and you should be able to get some reliable function out of it. For me, this is fantastic and it works excellent, so I'm going to go with it. I'm super happy with it, and I'm going to continue to run it because it is now my favorite. Hopefully this helped you guys and gave you guys an update and understanding of what you have to deal with to make this thing function properly. And for any of you guys that already have this barrel that are encountering issues, hopefully this information helps you. And if you don't already have the barrel and are looking into it, hope this information helps you as well to make a decision on whether it's worth it for you or not. If you guys have made it all the way to the end, I'm glad you guys stuck around. Hope this information helps. Please subscribe. I'll keep you guys posted on any future updates. And thanks again.